us off with a word of prayer for this session. Lillian? Lillian? I don't think Lenny is able to hear us. I'll ask Cohen kindly say a word of prayer so that we begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's believe and pray. Our Lord and Father, we thank you for granting us this opportunity to meet again as WMI family for this important webinar, Father. I ask you to guide us in whatever that we deliberate on, even to help the student, Father, make progress in his work. I pray, believe, and trust in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Cohen. I would like to take this opportunity to just give us an outline of how we will do this. We'll invite the guest for today, who is Anis Ibrahim. For the next 30 minutes, he will be able to give us to present his work. After that, we shall have a 15-minute session by the discussant with Joseph Mbane. Thereafter, we shall take a Q&A, which is a question and answer, for the next 40 minutes. And then we shall have a summary in 5 minutes. Thereafter, we shall have a last comment, which will be done by the director of the Institute, Professor Mungai, and we shall conclude and be able to exit the webinar. So for now, I would like to welcome Ibrahim to start us off with his presentation. He has the next 30 minutes. Let us pay attention to it. Anis, it is your floor. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bessie. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone hear me about. Yeah, I hope everyone is hearing my voice.
Speak a bit louder, Anis, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope my voice is clear.
Yes, it is clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I also hope that my screen is maybe can view my screen.
You haven't started presenting. Present.
Okay, thank you very much. My topic of study is effect of urbanization on urban forestry and air quality, a case study of Ngong Road Forest, which lies within Nairobi County. So to begin with, Bettler 2005 said that, he have found that global forest cover is estimated at 30% of global land, whereby now the world is losing almost 3% of this in between, 1990 and 1905, with Africa alone losing 9% of its forest cover between 2000 and 2005. This is due to industrial revolution, among other factors, that has resulted in increased population growth within urban cities. Urbanization is the most, drivers of land use land cover changes. It's a cause of land use land cover. That's according to Ball and Meyer, 2008. The increased population and rapid economic development are the key drivers, as already mentioned. That's according to Mundi and Amir.
Sorry, Anis, are you able to project your presentation?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I can't see it myself, but I don't know about others.
It's not visible. I can't see it. It's not visible.
Please project your presentation. Yes.
Yes, now it's coming.
Excellent.
Yeah, is it okay now?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So according to Butler 2005, the world is losing almost 3% of this forest cover. In between, it has lost in between 1990 and 2005, with Africa alone losing almost 9% forest cover. According to Halley, most of the thing that is maybe causing the forest cover to lose is because of industrial revolution, which have maybe led to also urbanization. And as urban cities, the population in urban cities is growing, there's a need for land for settlement, there's a need for land for, infrastructure development, land for social
And-
amenities, and many things. So
Anis, sorry to interrupt. Your screen is not showing what you're presenting. Your presentation is not being seen.
I think somebody else intervened and was trying to project. So let's have only one presenter, the main speaker, please.
is it visible now? Because I shared my screen.
There's someone who is presenting for you. I don't know who is presenting.
I think do it again.
Let me stop sharing again, and then I share again. What about now?
It's about to start. Yes, now it's showing.
Thank you very much. So I just mentioned that urbanization is one of the drivers of land cover change, as the population is increasing and maybe there is a rapid economic development that's occurring in cities, especially the developing countries. Yeah. So and this is urbanization as urban center is growing. It has many environmental challenges, including air pollution, which causes a lot of health implications. According to Davis and Hevel et al., smog in one of the cities have killed almost many people around. It has killed a lot of people due to air pollution. Presence of forest is one of the factors that could help ensure that the air quality reaches the minimum acceptable level. As you understand, forest sequesters, these pollutants as, within urban centers. So urban land use conversion to other land uses intensifies, thus sustaining and managing urban forests to continuously provide ecosystem, which is very important. So sustainable management of urban forestry will be very important because it plays a critical role in sequestering the pollutants, and also it sequesters carbon. According to UN, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals have set aside 17 goals, which has an billions people in the world, in the globe. So one of the SDGs, and most of the SDGs, it has relation with urban forestry and also environmental conservation and sustainable management of natural resources. So the problem here is about urbanization, which is, I mean, the cities are almost growing with, which is now extending to many parts of smaller towns like Kenya now. Kenya almost lost 500 kilometers square of its prime water towers between 1970 and 2010 alone, due to deforestation. That's Kirinda et al. 2005. Pollution and environmental degradation in urban areas have led to several challenges, such as air pollution and put pressure on green spaces. As you understand, green spaces, part of it is now urban forestry. Urban forestry in
Ibrahim,
Kenya,
please speak
yes.
up. Kindly speak up, because the participants are not hearing you well.
And also, sorry, and also if he can put his presentation into slide mode.
Slide mode.
You know that thing at the bottom left, and so that we see the entire slide.
Let me just press it again. Sorry. Yeah, so I hope you hear me again.
You understand what I mean by slide mode?
Yeah.
Cohen, can you help him, please?
Anis, you
Yes.
on your presentation on the bottom right, but I
Okay.
can't see your presentation. Yeah, on the bottom right there, where there is just before the zoom, there's an
Yeah.
icon. Not the
What about
next
now?
one. Not that one. The one that follows the zoom.
This one? Is this one?
The last one now. The last icon on that bar. Yes, that one.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, as I said, now most developing countries in developing countries are undergoing rapid urbanization.
Could you now? Yes.
Yeah, most cities in developing countries are undergoing rapid urbanization and pollution. Thus, the need for a sustainable city. That's according to Akuma et al. Kenya lost almost 500 kilometers square of its prime water due to deforestation. That's according to King et al. Pollution and environmental degradation in urban areas maybe have led to pollution, and maybe it has led to many challenges such as air pollution, and it has put pressure on green spaces, which includes now the urban forestry, it includes the natural parks and all that. Urban forestry in Kenya, particularly in terms of forest, is also facing a unique challenge in terms of due to its, pardon? Yeah, Ngongorod Forest is one of the urban forestry that is maybe facing a unique challenge due to the complexity and nature of the urban sprawl, and the consequences it has. Built-up areas in Nairobi has increased from 41 kilometer square from 1988 to 62 kilometer, which now can be projected that 1.49 kilometers square per year, an increase of 1.49 square per year from 2014 to 2020. That's according to a study done by India and ANIA. So my research objectives is about effect of urbanization on Ngongorod forest cover and its implication on air quality as an ecosystem service. So the specific objectives are to evaluate temporal pattern of forest cover dynamics between 1988 and 2009, assess the perception and practices of the local communities on urban forest governance and air quality, to evaluate the contribution of local community to Ngongorod forest cover and dynamics and air quality. So as you know, Ngongorod Forest is just located within some constituencies within Nairobi County that include Kibera, Dagoretti, and Langata sub-counties. And it lies 6 kilometers from the Nairobi Central Business District. That's according to Boyo et al. 2019. Nairobi County, or the city, has an altitude of 70 meters above sea level with an altitude of 36 degrees to 50, and a longitude of south 1 to 17 south. It has the city, maybe it has a regional headquarters of UN, United Nations agencies, and many international private institutions. The population have increased from 1.3 million to almost 4.3 million in 2019. That's according to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics 2019, and also Central Bureau of Statistics in 1999. The city now has the study area, the annual rainfall range between 850 to 1050 millimeter Yeah, that's according to CBS 2003. Globally, the population was estimated to rise in urban areas. That's according to UN, consuming 76% of Earth's natural resources, producing 70% of wastes. That's according to FS 1999, and it contributes 78% of carbon emissions. That's according to Green et al. 2008. Urbanization in most growing African cities led to land use changes in mode of transportation, which now have led to emissions of air pollutions, and also it has increased maybe the impact of air pollution. Less developing countries are mainly caused, the air pollution in developing countries are caused by compounds such as nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds, and also particulate matter. The rapid population growth in sub-Saharan Africa has been a major contribution to air pollution in urban cities and led to 176,000 deaths, according to Amiga. Urban trees influence local air quality in that it reduces or it increases the building energy use by shading buildings, altering airflows, and lowering air temperature. In Nairobi, is a study that was conducted by Muindi 2017, whereby he found there's a high level of particulate matter compared to, it has passed the recommended level by WHO, World Health Organization. Most air pollution in Kenya is caused by motor vehicles emissions and domestic use of biomass, as explained by Odhiambo et al. Mala et al. Also explains that indoor use of biomass had been a major contributor of air pollution in Kenya. That's according to Mala et al. Studies have been conducted, and these studies have found that the number of vehicles purchased by the citizens within this city have increased, and also the residential areas also have increased in terms of maybe accommodating the population, the larger population of the city. Thus, there is a need to track land cover and land use land cover change within the city. It's vitally important. It's very important for proper planning and decision making. So the methodologies I used here, it was two approach whereby there was a primary data and also a secondary data, but not a secondary data, a primary data that maybe encompasses using of maps and all that. So for the spatial data, I used ArcGIS, a version of the latest version, an MV of 5.3, an Earth Explorer, an Impact Toolbox, and also Google Earth. For ArcGIS, I used for maybe training the points to know which point is grassland, which point is forest, which point is maybe roads and all that. So first, for MV, I used the statistical computation, whereby at the end of the production of the map, I have used MV to know the area of each class and maybe the changes in between. For Google Earth engine, basically this one I've used for classification, whereby I have trained this software to make sure that each pixel represents a certain point, so that it can easily generate changes within the scenes. I used 1988, 1999 as a period of 10 years, and then between 1999 to 2019, and then between 2009, and then between 2009 to 2019. That's a period of now 10 years, but now in between there's that two scenes that I compared. For data analysis, I used the Excel, which I used mostly for differential analysis. That's correlation and also t-test, chi-square. No, chi-square I used for SPSS. So in terms of generating the map, this is a workflow that I have used. I requested an original map of the area from an institution called Regional Center for Mapping, whereby I got the shape files for Nairobi County, and then I have this layered using Google Earth to make sure that the shape file, represent exactly within the city. And then I have extracted the study area using ArcGIS also, and then whereby later there's a raster data on the right side, which is shape files, and then on the right side, which is images, and then we have a shape file on the left side that is now where the baseline area and maybe the structure of the study area encompasses. So whereby now, as I said, I've used multiple tools to make sure that I know the changes in between the scenes, whereby I use supervised classification for each raster file to know the changes in between, for example, land uses between forest to urban area, interchangeably, depending on how things have happened. So at the end of the product, there was a map that represents 1988 and each scene, which is classified image. But again, these two images combined together that represent the changes. It's now between 1988 and 1999. What is the changes? Between 1999 and 2009, what were the changes? And then between 2009 to 2019, what were the changes? At the end now, I combine one image that represents now the entire period between 1988 and 2019 to understand the dynamics in terms of the land use land cover within the study area, which is now areas around and within Ngong Forest. So basically for the qualitative and the primary data I collected, I used transect work and pretest, whereby this one was used to especially get an insight of the area and also maybe to make sure that the tool I'm using is well. It's an structured questionnaire. That's also one of the methodology I use. But now the approach I use is online data collect, whereby it was so sensitive maybe or unsafe for me to go and maybe directly collect manually. But now I use this software to make sure that I interview the households, which much easier. Again, it will help me, to get the data which is coded already, whereby owner platform will help me to get that data. I can, at the end of the day, I can easily retrieve this data, code it, and maybe do some corrections, and not corrections really, but data cleaning, and then I can easily analyze using SPSS or also Excel. Participant observation was also, I also use this to maybe get the impressions of the community whenever I'm asking a question, and also I took photos to maybe, FGD was also one of the key things which I've also used. So my sample size was 384 because the population of these three constituencies were more than 10,000, and according to Mugenda, if the population is more than 10,000, I have to 384, which is now the normal methodology that Mugenda uses. But now, alternatively, now again here, I was unable to reach 384 due to accessibility issues, because one of the areas was current. Now, going and accessing these forms were difficult during this pandemic time. So, as I said, SPSS was used for quantitative analysis, whereby now I got tables and graphs and pie charts. So interestingly now, when I did the land use land cover analysis, in between 1988 and 1999, there was no significant changes in the land cover land use land coverage, because most of these classes, the changes, I found that it was 0.2, which is greater than my alpha, 0.05. However, there was a negative correlation between built-up area and forest cover, whereby now, if you see now the forest against built-up area, there's a negative one, meaning if the built-up area increases, there was a decrease in the forest cover. But however, grassland and built-up area, there was no negative correlation, they were just positive. Yeah, during this time now, this is a period now, most of the forest acquisitions were happening. And according to the survey I conducted, there was a lot of forest acquisitions whereby the then president was giving out, lands to, political elites and many influential people. So, as you see now here, the gray part. Yes.
Anis, Ibrahim, kindly add volume to your,
Okay.
because we're not being able to hear you well.
Okay, sorry.
And you have 10 minutes.
Okay, sorry. So as you can hear now, you can visualize this, that the forest is still intact with less minimal impact. Yeah, but now all of this area, the gray area, is mostly grassland, and this less reddish thing, I mean, the built-up area has not impacted within the forest. I mean, there's no also access of, infrastructural development within the forest, compared to now 1999 and 2009, whereby now there was a lot of infrastructural development, especially the roads that have split the forest into almost 3 parts. Yeah, so between this period now, there was a significant deforestation with a p-value of 0.04, and also still there was a negative correlation between built-up area and forest. As I explained, with increase in built-up area, there is a reduction in forest cover. 1,493 hectares of tree cover within the area was converted to other land uses. And as you see now, if you compare 2009, the map of 2009, and the map of 1988, 1989, there's a difference in terms of the built-up area, which has massively increased. Between now 2009 and 2019, there's a significant deforestation with a p-value of 0.036, whereby now 338 hectares of the tree cover was changed to other land uses. Where now the highest now was accounted for built-up area. As you see now again here, 2019, the built-up area have increased with a shrinking forest cover, and if you can easily observe, there's a lot of roads construction that happen within the forest. That also the forest have been reduced into patches, into almost 5 blocks. Yeah, into 5 blocks. As you see now, there is also a negative correlation between forest cover and built-up area. Yeah, the objective 2 was about to know the perception of and practices of local communities, whereby now women were the majority of the households that have been sidelined in terms of decision making. And there's an evidence that gender and community involvement in decision making were these 2 variables are related in a way. However, majority of the people disagree that they are involved in decision making as related to the forest. Discussion with Ngong Road Forest Association revealed that they have few staffs in managing the forest blocks, but again, the community have been involved in conservation, but now in terms of benefit sharing, they have been sidelined. So they were limiting that they are not being given, in terms of revenue. But now they are actively involved. The community has fenced one of the block, which is the forest block, block 1, that is now hosted by Kenya Forest Service. It has been securely fenced. Yeah, but now in terms of now revenues that come out from this forest, they are not given any incentives. So in terms of decision making also, there is a relationship between involvement of the community in decision making and also gender, as I said. There is also there's a correlation between there's a correlation between tree plantation, source of energy cooking, and also occupation, quantity of forest. Is that significant relationship between these variables, whereby now those who rely on food and charcoal, the majority of them, they planted trees that are almost less than 500 within 12 months. So whereby now majority of them, they were processing less than 500 kg of forest products, which is firewood or charcoal in between this period. 40% of the planted trees were those who have planted trees, sorry, were entrepreneurs, while 35% of them were farmers. Now there's a relationship between now occupation and also the tree plantation. So majority of the people, 81% of them, believe that the forest conservation is very important, and they think that the forest, they attribute this importance of the forest to air quality, which almost 58%. Household, now in terms of now changes, they attribute air quality changes to deforestation, 58.8%, and also pollution from vehicles, pollution from factories, 15%. So in terms of now, in terms of the cover dynamics, in terms of the contribution of local community, majority of the households depend on non-forest business. That's something commercial based, or maybe source of employment. Employment is something else that's not related within the forest, product. So whereby now 15% of them were farmers, and 2.7% of them were tree nursery, those who depend on tree nursery. So in terms of accessibility now, 49.8% had no access to forest products, whereby now 1.8% had an access without fear of penalties. So there was a relationship between now level of access to forest products and gender, whereby 62% of the majority of the women had no access to forest products, and 38% of men had no access to the forest product. Those who had access to forest products, 82% didn't sell the product. That means now they depend on the forest products. Maybe they use that product domestically, for consumption purpose and all that. Here, but now half of the household don't rely on the forest, but now the majority who rely on the forest, they use the products such as firewood, which is 19.6%, and then followed by charcoal, which is 13.2%. These are the products that are now processed from the forest. In terms of now accessibility and the relationship between accessibility and source of energy, majority of the households, almost 100 of them, they rely on LPG, but now they had no access. By 14%, 14 of them had access without fear of penalty, while 20 of those who rely on firewood had little access with fear of penalties. That's generally in terms of accessibility and also source of. So in terms of gender, as I said, 42 amongst those who had no access, 67 were women. So the majority who had no access were women. But now the majority who had little access with fear of penalty was women again. But now, whereby now 27 of them are men. So in terms of accessibility, again, with gender, there's that correlation. So generally, there's a rapid growth. The rapid growth of Nairobi city have affected the morphology of Ngong Forest, which lies within the edges of Southern Bypass and also many residential areas. Though the country started full implementation of Forest Act 2005, which has been maybe revised in 2007 and again 2015, but now effective implementation of this policy is in question, whereby the community are saying that we are not involved. Majority of them are saying we are not involved in decision making based on this. Again, in terms of accessibility, in terms of benefit sharing of the resource, they are said that we are sidelined, despite them being being in forefront in terms of conservation of the forest. The local community adjacent to the forest, especially women, are not involved in decision making. I have mentioned that. So my recommendations are that the government will strengthen the existing policies and also maybe incorporate or establish benefit sharing policies that can enable the community to get these benefits as an incentive so that they can easily protect and continue conserving the forest. Due to the fragile nature of the forest, I also suggest that the remaining 3 blocks, forest blocks, to be fenced, because one of the biggest block which nears Kibera is, there's a lot of degradation. Communities can easily access the forest in terms of firewood, in terms of the woods itself, in terms of even many forest products. So there's a need to fence the forest, to securely fence, at the same time giving them incentive so that they are involved within they're involved in conservation of the forest. So I also recommend further studies so that this study can easily quantify the amount of pollutants or carbon that the forest sequesters, so that the policymakers can easily understand or value the importance of the forest. That's my recommendations. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim, for your presentation. I must apologize for the issue of your sound. Your sound was not so clear. So please, in the next session, the discussant, Joseph Mbane, is having issues with his network. As he sorts out that, I will move to the next session, which is the question and answer. Ibrahim, I would kindly ask you that you be able to have a friend also to assist you with the questions that will be asked. We'll start with the first 5 questions. Please unmute yourself orderly so that we're able to hear the first 5 questions for Ibrahim. I welcome questions for Ibrahim right now as we wait for the discussant to sort out the issue of network on his side.
Maybe I can start.
Yes, Prof.
Anis, could we look at your title, the title of your thesis? The first slide? Yes.
Yeah.
Effect of urbanization on urban forestry and air quality. First of all, I would suggest that you could reframe it as follows: effect of urbanization on urban forestry and perceptions on air quality. because what we dealt with are actual perceptions rather than measurements of air quality. How about your objectives?
Pardon?
Your objectives, could we go to the slide with the objectives?
Okay, that's objective.
Yes. The first one is evaluating the forest dynamics, forest cover dynamics. Then the second one is assessing perception. Okay. Perception and practice of the local communities, and then evaluate the contribution of the local community. I heard you talk about governance, and where in these objectives are you dealing with governance, and what governance parameters did you investigate?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to respond it now or later?
Maybe let me finish. If you can write down because I think you need to look again at your results. Then you look at your conclusions. What are you concluding? And then look at your recommendations. Because I think I saw a disconnect between your conclusions and therefore recommendations. And I think that's very important. Now, I think I'll make some general comments to all of us. I think it is very important that we get prepared for a presentation well in advance. Look at all aspects so that we choose some time at the beginning because of either the voice or because of the slides. They are not in the slide mode, the presentation mode, and so on and so forth. The second comment, general, really, is on how we report scientific findings or scientific research. It is always in the past tense because this is work that you did or somebody did, and you say the sample size was ABCD. It's always in the past tense. I think that is very important. The third general comment for all of us is the presentation techniques. This is very, very important that we get prepared in advance on the techniques that we are going to use. For instance, the slides with maps are not legible. The maps are not legible, from the current speaker, and there could be graphs, there could be other things. So it's good we practice and we check on the best techniques to make our presentations. I think that's what I have for Annie. So if you can respond to that, especially the questions on your research work. The others are general.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. I think the first question was about governance aspect in terms of my objectives and my entire study. One of the objectives was to assess the perception and practices of local communities on urban forest governance and air quality. So there was two-pronged approach whereby I was comparing the practices in terms of the household level. At the household level, how do they use these forest products? How do they make sure that this forest is conserved in terms of their practices like tree plantation, their practices in terms of also how these institutions, Ngong Forest Association and also Kenya Forest Service, the conservator that was they have an office there at Ngong Forest. How are they involved in the community in terms of decision making? So basically, it was more of household level. Again, at the same time, how these institutions are open to this community in terms of making the community involved in decision making. So that's one of the key things I was highlighting, whereby my findings is that there is no inclusivity in terms of decision making. The forest associations themselves have committees whereby only this one woman who is administrator, but now the rest are men. in terms of informal engagement, there's no much informal engagement of these communities who are around this forest. Yeah, in terms of decision making. Only that we have some few women associations who are directly involved in maybe harvesting honey, harvesting firewood, but they have an association. But there's no direct engagement in terms of decision making, as I said, yeah, in terms of involving them on their perception about policies, on their perception about the general management of the forest, because they feel threatened. When they see a guard who is now manning the forest, they feel that they are threatened, and then they don't have that ownership of the forest. So the other thing was, yeah, that's one of the questions that you raised.
I don't know, Anis, given the topic, effect of urbanization on forest, I don't know whether I missed it, but I would have expected maps and tables indicating, and for those period of years that you analyzed satellite imagery, I would have expected that, first of all, the delineation of your study area. Urbanization in 1970 to 1980 was this much. The forest was so many, thousands of hectares, all the way to the present time. I don't know whether I missed that.
Yeah, actually, I haven't added here, but I have it, unless I can open it with my Word document.
No,
yeah,
it's okay. It's okay if you have it. But
yeah, so the forest cover, I just mentioned about the forest cover was 1,575 hectares in 1988. But now in 2019, the forest cover was 1,174 hectares. This is now based on my findings. If you now actually go to the literature review, the current, the perceived forest cover is 1,224 hectares. So there's that mismatch between, according to literature and according to the institutions, and also what I found, which is now 1,174 hectares.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we have more questions?
Yes, I could pose one, Dr. Kathabi.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Thanya.
Yeah, thank you, Ibrahim, for the presentation. And this is an area of interesting of urban. In fact, when you talked about air quality, I was expecting to see the levels of P2 and carbon measurements, but now as you progress, then I came to understand it's about perception. And I think I totally agree with Mogai that that should be reflected on the title, so that we don't expect chemistry of air quality. Now, there are two things that I observed that maybe will be interesting to hear from you. One of them is on land cover, and I think it's more interesting to present what you call land use matrix, and I think what you're presenting on the screen that is on now is that land use matrix. But much more informative when you put the figure so that you can be able to see what level of grassland in 1989 has shifted to forest in 1999, or what was forest in 1989 and what has shifted, and you can be able to see what those figures. That's much more informative than looking at the p-value, because then you can be able to see which land use is shifting to which particular land use. And the other thing that maybe you might want to consider, because the other work that been done recently by students there, is also to look at those areas that are officially forests and those areas that have already been settled, because I think your map extends beyond the gazetted forest area. And like you're seeing recently, part of it has been settled for a long time. And it's good to say what is that area that has been forest and what has been taken away in terms of the built-up environment. And it would be nice, I don't know whether you've done NDVI, that would be nice to see the changes in terms of overall vegetation index over the areas. The other one is about perception, and Gong forest is not like any other forest. It's very, very different in terms of management. And we have two CFAs in one CFA. One of the CFA is the local community that comes from Mutwine, that comes from Waithaka, that come from the local informal settlement there. Now that CFA is subject to the corporate CFA. The corporate CFA is the one that is formed by the local residents who have built their houses there, those who have nice brick houses, people who work in Nairobi in private and in private business and government who form around. So they have a CFA that normally gives access to firewood and management of the forest to the other one. And that should be able to come out in your work, because when you generalize it, unless you can qualify that you actually only dealing with the informal settlement, you didn't talk to the perception of the other people who you didn't categorize, because you cannot lump those two together because their perceptions will be very different. I'd like to know how you segregated for those two particular groups. And that will be the same scenario that you find if you work in Karura. There's what you call the Friends of Karura. And then there are those other people who come from the slums behind Karura next to Ruda Estates. That's the CFA that collects firewood, that deals with clearing, that deals with hunting, where the other group deals with jogging and walking. So how did you separate those two in terms of your work, or whether you took care of that particular aspect? Thank you, Ibrahim, but it's interesting work to read. I look forward to reading the final product. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ibrahim.
Thank you very much. The first question was about, as I've earlier mentioned, I was supposed to put it that, the table in terms of the forest cover change, which class have shifted to which class within the period. Unfortunately, I have it, but I haven't added it because I was just trying to minimize, the space. Thank you. The other thing was about, in terms of the dynamic CFS around the forest. So, as target population was the community. The community now have CFS. What I did was, I first of all did a household survey within the villages around this area, Mutwini, Kibera, Karen, and also part of it, Bomas, and part of Jamhuri, at the same time, Kibera. So these are the few villages or locations that it surrounds the forest. In terms of now getting the dynamics, I was unable to access Karen, which was part of my sample, and Karen and Bomas, which host now this Polish house, homes, whereby it's very hard for me. It was very hard for me to actually access them. Yeah, I think because of this corona and whatever. So when I get now a focal point who was working with Ngong Forest Association as secretary, called the Fed, he have helped me with a contact so that I can easily access this association. But now I was unable to, he was unable to pick my call. So I don't know, because of security issues, because of corona, accessibility in terms of accessing this, these villas is very hard. That was part of my sample, and now my sample size was 219. I mean, the interviewed people were 219, but my sample size was 384. You can understand now the gap, whereby now I need to equilibrate, maybe got that perception in terms of their views. So that was part of it. For NDFI, I have not done NDFI, but I basically relied on the tools I mentioned so that I can easily do these classifications. Yeah, I hope I have answered your questions.
Right, thank you. Also, Peter Ndongo on the chat has asked you that there is no objective that has air quality. None of your specific objective has that. Kindly address that. Do you have any other question?
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
My first question is, when you're doing your research, did you find out if there's a particular species that the people who live within the area of Ngong Forest usually use, and which particular species is this? And I'd like to know your thoughts on how we can balance urbanization while still protecting the environment and at the same time protecting the livelihoods of the people who live around Ngong Forest. Yeah.
Is there another question?
Yes. I have one.
Benson?
Thank you, Dr. I must say that Anis has tried his best and he has a wonderful topic of study. And if he can get the facts all well, then this will be a wonderful piece of work which can be shared with the government of Nairobi for better management of Ngong Forest. Now, if you, and this, you can go to the study area. The study area. Now, the study area, I don't know whether it is, he basically putting a lot of information on Nairobi County in terms of statistics or data, but your study is more on Ngong Forest. So I would, I don't know whether it is ideal to give us or to give more information on Ngong Forest because that is the area of study than Nairobi. Two is, as you have said that you have done a lot of study there in terms of what is really happening there within the forest. Now, did you manage to take a walk there to see what are the emerging issues currently? That is in terms of government efforts to sustain the forest. Thank you.
Right. You can answer that, Anis, Ibrahim.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. To start with Ndongo's question about air quality in objective, two objectives were focusing on air quality, the objective 2 and objective 3. So, yeah, the other question was about species, whether I'm able to found species. Generally, my focus of study was more of the impact of urbanization in terms of the physical, the relationship between urban infrastructures, the development that's going on, and at the same time, the existence of the forest. So my focus was that, not more. I was not giving much technical, in terms of knowing which species the community, which the most widely used products in terms of the speciesness. Yeah. So in terms of now balancing between urbanization and conservation, I think this is an international effort that's now that maybe United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are addressing. And I think there's a need for the government to balance the strike between economic development, infrastructural development, and also the forest conservation in between. You understand now, Southern Bypass have partly destroyed the forest. It has segregated the forest into habitats, different portions, and these portions are, they're in a verge of maybe completely being destroyed if there's no policies that can now effectively control, effectively conserve the forest. So there's a need to have sustainable forest management, whereby now the community are actively engaged. The community are given incentives in terms of revenue, resource sharing. Yeah, there's that gap in terms of policy to address sustainable forest management. So the other question was about the study area. Okay, I haven't given much details in terms of Ngong Road Forest, but Ngong Road Forest, the location itself is existing within many constituencies, which is part of Nairobi County. So I think the description in terms of the location and all that will be just within Nairobi. But now, if I need to give much details in terms of the description or maybe the biodiversity and all that, maybe specifically focusing on the study area. So the emerging issues, there's an issue about emerging issues whereby now there's this continued development in terms of residential areas, in terms of infrastructural development, and then there's an issue of historical, excisions that happened between 1988 to 1999, and then these excisions historically now people have, transferred this ownership to many people. There's a change of people, and then the issue of now about ownership, about title deeds and all that. So that's why you can, I don't know whether you have been following the news whereby there was planned eviction of the communities living around Bomas, which is one of the blocks of the forest. So is that issue that's coming up whereby the government is trying to enforce, the original ownership of this, whereby now they want to recover the forest cover. So there's that issue. But now you understand that has been halted by the court. Yeah. So that are my response in terms of the questions. I don't know whether I have missed any question here.
Peter Ndungu had asked you about your objectives not having air control quality. I'm sure you addressed that. Is there any other question? Do you have any more questions for Ibrahim? Yes, Veronica? Ibrahim, Veronica says that there's the issue in your methodology. There was a statement of using regression, correlation, and chi-square. Please retain the work on only the methods applied. And in addition, there was a statement on Excel for correlation and t-test. Please check if there was use of regression, and perhaps consider showing in tables both coefficients and p-values such that both significant variables and the direction of the relationship. I believe you're being asked on your methodology. Can they expand on that? Is there any more? Are there more questions? Okay, Ibrahim, kindly address Veronica's.
Yeah, I have used Excel partly, and also I have used SPSS partly, whereby for SPSS I used the data, depending on the kind of data I had, whereby the categorical data versus continuous data, I used SPSS, whereby I used the chi-square, and then for the other independent variables, which had maybe a continuous in terms of measure, so I used the Excel, which had,
we can't hear you. Ibrahim, we can't hear you.
So I've said, depending on the type of data, I use the SPSS, which mostly was a cardinal data versus a continuous data. But now for correlation and t-test, I used Excel, whereby, I used Excel. So the question was about considering maybe having tables and contributions for p-values. I think I've indicated in my slides about the p-values. Yeah, so for now, for the regression part, I haven't indicated here. Yeah, but for the correlation analysis, you have seen the types of variables and how they are relating in terms of the direction, whether it's negative side or whether it's positive side. So Yeah, that is my response. So was there any other question about that?
I don't think so. Is there more questions for Ibrahim?
Yes, Ibrahim, can you go back to where you're talking about SPSS?
In terms of the results?
Yes, just go back. Use of SPSS. You say SPSS was used to do something?
Yeah, for chi-square.
Fine, I think you're not getting there, but I think I've seen SPSS, I've seen Excel, and it's very important to note that just like Word doesn't write the document, SPSS doesn't analyze the data, neither does Excel analyze the data. You use the statistical tools to analyze the data. So you need to collect that. It's not SPSS that does the analysis. In SPSS, you have regression, you have got descriptive statistics, you have got ANOVA, and those are the ones that you use for analyze the data. Okay. The other aspect is that when you do image analysis, it's always very good to indicate the row and the path where you downloaded your images from, because those are the reference points. If you want to go back and check what images you used, and I didn't see that. I remember I didn't see that. That is very important. The row and the path that you downloaded the data. I'm not very sure whether I saw that in the analysis. And yes, those are important to indicate in your work. And if you did any auto rectification, it's also important to indicate what kind of rectification you did to the images, because that also dictates the final classification accuracy. Thank you, Kadabi.
Right. Ernest, you want to?
May I
Yes,
add
Prof.
something? I think
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Denya. That's a very important point on being explicit on the methodology. With respect to what Dr. Denya has said, how did you analyze, your images step by step, and then be explicit on the statistical methods that were used. Never mind whether you use STATA or SPSS. And finally, I hope you have a map of your study area, because what you presented to us was a description of your study area. And yet, a map is essential that shows you the forest and other important features, plus the areas where you said you sampled, including where you couldn't get access. That would give the person who is reading your thesis or the person who is listening to you a good idea of your your study area. And maybe in connection with that, you mentioned several villages or areas where you went to to interview people. How did you select which village? How did you select which people to administer your questionnaire?
Thank you very much, Prof. So thank you for the comments in terms of being explicit in my methodology and also statistical methods I used.
Anis, Ibrahim,
yes.
kindly speak up.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you very much, Prof. The question about how did I selected these samples within these villages. So I have used the current census population, whereby I wanted 384 years, but now in terms of getting in terms of their population, I mean their size, so I could have allocated this village. For example, we have the Kureti constituency, we have Langata, and we have Kibera. So I have just divided it in a portion that it can maybe resemble, or it can easily represent the population that is within these constituencies. So within the constituency, again, we have villages. So I just targeted within 5-kilometer radius from the forests. Yeah, 5 kilometer in terms of the distance. So I refine myself within these locations.
Yes. And when you went to the village?
Yeah, so when I went to village, I used a systematic random sampling whereby I was starting from, if I start from one household, I skip another household. So I kept on moving like that.
No, I'm interested in your sampling frame because you may not use the constituency population, because below the constituency,
we have location, yeah.
Or below sub-county, you have wards, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you would have taken wards that are closest to the forest.
Yes, as I've said.
And then you apply your 5-kilometer distance. So
yeah,
that so that your sample would come from all those households that are within 5 kilometers. And you would draw your sample from that population, not from the sub-county or constituency population. I don't know. Am I correct?
Yeah. So when I when I've understood this, the constituency, I came towards the sub-county and then the ward. But now again, the ward, we have villages that are near the forest, the forest boundary. So that was my approach. Whereby I was contacting chiefs. Through the chiefs, I was able to get now. I was able to get access to these households.
What population did you use to get your sample size of 380 something?
For each villages?
You have a sample size of 380 what?
4, yeah.
3 what?
384.
So what population went into Mugenda and Mugenda's formula, for you to get that sample size? Is it that of the constituency sub-county, or is it that of the villages within 5 kilometers radius?
It was the constituencies.
I think you have to rethink that because you may have sampled people who have nothing to do with the forest, unless you are biased.
No.
Any other question?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes, Frida.
Can I see the last slide, the slide on recommendations? Yeah, the candidate found that most of the land use change is as a result of the built environment, expansion of the built environment. So I was expecting a very strong recommendation on what should be done about that. And the fact that the government has not implemented the act and just making a light statement that the government should strengthen implementation of existing forest policies. I mean, it looks so weak. I was expecting something very radical, yeah, that needs to be done to ensure that the urban forest boundaries are restored or maintained or even weak. I would expect something more serious in the recommendations, yeah? Like, can we have a fence around Ngong Forest? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know whether it sounds very weak. Policies are there, but still implementation was the weakest point of it. So also, I think I also mentioned about fencing. Maybe the wording is somehow weak, but now I have mentioned fencing. My second,
Okay, it's okay. Just think about them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we want something that will ensure that Ngong Forest remains. And then the aspect of the sampling frame that Prof has talked about, we really need a very clear explanation what your sampling frame was. Okay, it's okay to use the formula and get the 384. It always works out that way when you are dealing with a large population. Yeah, but we need a very clear sampling frame from which you picked your sample size. Yeah. So when you're writing, please consider that. Otherwise, as he says, your work would look like it is biased. Although you could also have deliberately selected the other areas that are far away from the forest to see whether they have any interactions that are farther away from the forest, whether they have any interaction with the forest. But initially, you have talked about the 5 kilometers. So we would probably expect you to be working around the 5 kilometers. But you could still tell us something about the other villages that are far away from the forest. Is there an interaction between those villages and the forest? Just things to think about so that when you are doing your fine, incorporate the necessary information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments.
Ibrahim, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I have no any comments about that. It was just a point to note. Yeah.
Okay. So I believe we've exhausted the questions. I'll just do a small summary so that we all get to take our take-homes from this section. To begin with, we had the issue of the topic, let your topic readjust it so that it fits the results that you're portraying. Secondly, as well, the issue of your methodology, let it be very explicit. Tell us how you've done it, where you did it, how you did it, the sampling frame, how it was done, so that you're able to explain the data analysis, which tools you used, and how the tools have influenced the results that you portray. The issue of communication of your results, as Prof said, they should be very clear and scientific. Again, the references, make sure you reference the maps, where you have gotten the maps from, where you got them from, so that it is not plagiarism. Again, your recommendations need to be strong enough so that the research you have done is not just shelved. We need proper recommendations and references. In general, also, the preparation of your slides, as advised by our director, at your communication from the beginning to the end, that you prepare for this particular webinars, when you know which is your slide, what is your slide, how you want to communicate, so that there are no gray areas on the same. So with that, I would now like to call our director to give his concluding remarks as we finalize this webinar. And I want to thank everybody for this section. Professor Mungai.
Thank you, Dr. Katambi. I would like to start by thanking Anis for his presentation. It appears you have a lot of data, but I think the comments which you have received today will help to improve ultimately your thesis. I want to thank Dr. Katambi also for moderating this afternoon session. I want to thank all the participants. I'm very pleased. I noted that we have participants from other units in the university. Dr. Frida Mogo is from the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. I noticed also quite a number of other participants and whom I'm sure are from other units, either in CAVS or other colleges in the university, and most probably maybe from outside the university. I want to thank our M.Sc and PhD cohorts. The attendance was very good. This is very encouraging. These webinars are not only useful to the presenters, but they are also useful to us as listeners. Either we gain new knowledge or we get some, some advice on how to present, how to analyze our data, how to present our data, and so on and so forth. So in short, I want to thank everybody, and I take it back to Dr. Kadambi.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Mungai. Thank you for our participants. We will conclude, and I'll ask Lillian to pray for us as we conclude this session.
Thank you. Good evening all, or good afternoon all. I hope I'm audible. Let's believe and pray.
Yes,
Can you hear me? Okay,
yes.
Fine. Let's believe and pray. Father, Lord Almighty, we come before throne of your mercies this afternoon with a heart full of thanksgiving for continued protection, sustenance. Thank you, God, for even the event today, the seminar today. We want to thank you for Anis, and we pray that God, Lord Almighty, shall grant him knowledge, wisdom, understanding to be able to implement the comments that have been shared in his work so that he can give impact to the country and the globe at large. We pray for continued protection to each one of us. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Yes, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.